listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
What's up? Thanks for your time and for listening to my show Straight to Video. So what's going on with you? Festival season is close to wrapping up and we're in freaking September. How and when did that happen? 2022 for me at least has been the fastest year yet, but I think I've said that for the past 10 years or so. It's pretty scary. But the podcast keeps moving forward, and today, if you're listening when this show goes out, we see the long overdue, 2-decade wait release for the brand new Grand Theft Audio album, Pass Me The Conch. Yes, it's out today, and the band start a UK tour next Friday in Glasgow, and go till near the end of the month, sharing the stage with CJ Wildheart and Scott Sorry. So for you Wildhearts fans, that's a full-on Wildhearts fest. I'll be out there with them playing bass, and I'm super excited for this tour. It's the first proper tour for me in a couple of years, and I'm so ready to get back into that headspace again. So with all that in mind, I thought it was only appropriate to chat with GTA frontman Jay Butler on today's show, and it's a good one. Jay chats to me all about growing up, his love of skateboarding and introductions to music, followed by the whirlwind success of GTA, and eventually his return to songwriting after almost 2 decades, and once again teaming up with Grand Theft Audio drummer Ritch Battersby to once again rock and party like it's the year 2000. The GTA story is a pretty unique one for most bands, so it was cool to hear all about it from Jay himself. And if you're not familiar with the band, please head on over to grandtheftaudio.uk. The band have got a great website with a brilliant blog page where Jay shares some more tour stories, along with the site having all their videos, merch and social media links. As I'll be out on the road with the band from the 9th of September until the 24th, you won't find me at the 80s video shop in Alfredton, but the shop will continue to be open on Saturdays and Sundays, so pop along and see Chris. It will let you head back in time to see all the old videos, posters and arcade machines we have, and he'd love to chat all about it with you. Check out at 80s Video Shop on all social media for up-to-date news and info. Alright, let's get into today's episode. Don't forget the new Grand Theft Audio album, Pass Me The Conch, is out today. But right now, please enjoy my straight-to-video chat with Jay Butler. Weeks are just flying by. I can't believe. What are we away from the tour? Is it like...
It's like fucking 2 weeks or something.
Shit.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. That's like my holiday now. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to just go and...
After those gigs, I'm like proper buzzing.
Yeah, I was, man. It was wicked, wasn't it?
Really, really good. So I'm excited for more people to see it and get some friends out to the shows as well for them to see it.
Yeah, I did an interview last night and I was saying to the dude then, I was like, oh man, this is like... After the Camden... I mean, not after the first one, but after the Camden one as well. It was like, oh, this is the band. Do you know what I mean? This is the fucking band. There's no like, it doesn't feel like you're like the new guys really. It just feel like, oh yeah, it was wicked. It was so like, felt so good, didn't it? It felt so sort of normal.
Yeah, I'm excited, mate. It's going to be a lot of fun. But thank you for doing this. I'm excited to chat for a bit. We're pretty much, well, I think we are the same age, both 74, not 74 years, but born in 74. So I'm excited to hear some of the influences that you grew up with and maybe how different or similar things were for you, or if we had similar trends or favourite pop culture references as a kid. But also want to chat music and the new Grand Theft Audio album, which is due out in just a few weeks, beginning of September. But just to rewind and get some kind of timeline, where did you grow up prior to all the band stuff beginning to take off for you? Have you always been down south?
Yeah, always down south. My mum and dad, like a lot of people, like Londoners who then moved out to the good life in Essex. And that was kind of their generation's aspirational move. So I was born and then grew up in sort of near Southend, which is like a seaside shithole built on a estuary of effluent that comes from the Thames. That's where I grew up. And then when I was about 13, I moved to Chelmsford, which is a bit more of a middle class kind of Essex move. And that's where I really got sort of interested in music.
Before music, though, what was you into? Was you into sports or films? Or
No, never sports, shit sports. My first thing was like I was into drawing. That was like my thing, you know, like from right when I was a kid, it was just drawing everything.
what, monsters?
Anything, man, like comics, cartoons, like gory stuff, you know, like just kid stuff, you know, sci-fi. And that was like my thing. Like I was a Star Wars, same as you, Star Wars generation. So it was like Wicked, Star Wars, Alien, like all the associated comics and stuff. And then like, you know, all that graphic stuff I loved, 2000 AD, those sort of comics.
Was you getting like the English comics?
A mix of both, really. Whatever you could get. That day and age, it was a bit hard to come by stuff. It wasn't like now, was it? Andrew was at the behest when he was little, of where your mum and dad would take you. Southend was all right for getting Kiss Me Quick Hats and rock and, you know, candy floss, but it wasn't so great for getting like subculture, like comics or anything. Yeah, so that was that. And then skateboarding, that was my big thing. And that was like obviously massive American influence. And you get a lot again, like I loved all the graphics and the music that came with it. Like when you buy Thrasher magazine, there'd be skate rock compilations and there's like, you know, loads of sort of American punk and skate punk.
What year was that then when skateboarding hit your radar?
Probably mid-80s, I'd say. And that was when I first was like got into it. It was having it sort of died a death and then it had a bit of a revival.
I had like a Turbo 2 skateboard.
Yeah. Well, that's what everyone had the same. We were all like, I think because our generation probably, first of all, you were scooting around those little plastic things that your brother had chucked out when the first craze passed in the 70s. And then, then they made those massive whale, like big wood boards. And it was like, oh, this is fucking rad. Like big luminous for sale sign on wheels. And there's a lot of that bombing along on your ass and all that. And then obviously you start seeing the American stuff and it was like, oh, you can actually do tricks and stuff. And then it was its own subculture. So that was, definitely my thing.
Is it something you've like dived in and out of over the years?
Yeah. I was still surrounded by fucking skateboards and I can't get away from them. It was sort of my life. Yeah, it started in the mid-80s and then I probably stopped doing it. It was like a life thing. Probably stopped doing it in the early 90s, around the time I got more involved in doing bands. And then you sort of pick it up again, and like I've still got decks. I still, you know, like I'm now in the senior Silver Surfer League. Still got the same friends who used to skate, and they're all skating. So it's a bit of a lifetime thing.
You ever got into like the graphics side of it? You say you like drawing?
Yeah, definitely. That was part of the appeal originally. Much before I was even knew anything about actual skating itself, it was like the boards had such great graphics, and there was that artist Pusshead who used to do. I think he's done Metallica's, and all that sort of like great graphical stuff. And obviously at that age you're into like the horror movies and all the other crap that you're into, and it's all kind of intertwined, you know what I mean? So yeah, I was definitely a massive influence on me.
You've got a younger sister. Is it just the two of you?
No, 5 of us.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. That's Catholics for you. No, I'm joking. My mum and dad were both married before they had us, to separate people. So my dad had a son and my mum had 2 daughters. And then when they married, they had myself and my younger sister. Grew up like the fucking Waltons, you know what I mean? I didn't know any of that. I was just like, we were just one sort of family, you know.
What's the age difference?
My oldest sister is 10 years older than me. My youngest is, I think she's 3 years younger than me.
You always all got on pretty well.
Yeah. I think probably my brother's the one I had the least to do with. But, you know, that's just geographical as well as age difference.
Did they ever come out to any shows or anything like that?
He hasn't. I think he's the only one in my family who hasn't, funny enough. I think even my dad's been to a gig in the past.
How do they feel about you getting back into it again after all this time?
Oh, they love it. Yeah, they love it. My mum and dad are getting on now. They've always been really open-minded about everything. So I've been really lucky like that. They've always encouraged me and everything. And my mum's really musical, so loves it, wants you to do it, plays the records, you know, fucking wants a copy of everything, you know. So you know you're going to sell at least one, you know what I mean? So yeah, mum's got a copy of everything I've ever done, I think, like typical mum.
I know it wasn't until GTA that you kind of properly travelled. So what were holidays like for you guys? Was it just Southend stuff?
Proper, just normal, what I would say like normal fucking working class holidays. We went to like, you know, we go to Yarmouth or, you know, Hemsby, places by the coast where, what are those fucking dismal holiday camps called, like Pontins or Butlins? You know, if you went there, you was really having it off. Like, Dad's had a good year, you know, and then we'd go there for a week and watch your parents and your aunt and uncle get pissed at the cabaret.
How many of you went then? Was it like the whole family?
Yeah, great holidays, because my aunt and uncles would come as well with their kids, my cousins. We'd all have each other to play with, so we'd be in all sorts of mischief. And then the parents would be off, probably, I would imagine, just getting battered for the week. And doing what everyone did in the 80s, you know what I mean? Like smoking and drinking and like watching the cabaret, watching the fucking magician, you know.
Shut up, man. Do you remember like the first time some music really made a big impression on you and who it was? Like when you were like, holy shit, you perhaps listened to music before, but when you heard this, it was like something different.
I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I think you've got like selective memory with stuff, you know, like where you try and be cool and you try and paint it as like, yeah, the first thing I remember was Never Mind the Bollocks. And actually, that's not true. I remember the very first time hearing something and being, wow, that was when I was really little. And I think my mum was playing Count Basie, Atomic, that album. And she was a real jazz fan. And I didn't even really understand the concept of like music, but you know, like just a sound, and you start doing pitches in your head. And I can remember listening to this bit of music and thinking, put that one on again with all the mountains and volcanoes. And do you know what I mean? Like, because that's what in my head it all sounded like. But I remember that making an impression, you know, it was the first sort of thing that really made my imagination fire up with music.
What about when you're a bit older, like as in like guitar bands or anything like that?
Again, I'd love to say something really cool, but I think it was probably something quite uncool. It was probably something I can remember hearing really early U2 and thinking, I really like the sound of the guitar with all the echoey stuff. I remember that really well. And like it must have been like October or one of those albums. And then obviously, I suppose the real one that was the real pivotal one was probably the sort of Never Mind the Bollocks, I'd say, or maybe the Clash's first album. But those were the ones I was like, oh, this speaks to me. This is my thing, you know, even though I was fucking 10 years too late. But that was, you know, that sounds how I feel.
Where did you first hear them then? Because I think it would have been really late on for me to hear like the Sex Pistols. I knew the name, but I didn't really hear them till like much later.
Just mates. I had... you know, you've always got like a couple of cool mates who are always ahead of the, like, you know, they're always in the thing. And like, it was kind of, I'm saying that. And I've skipped a bit because there was a bit like the Beastie Boys were a big thing when that came out. And that was kind of like punk for our generation. Because if you had a skateboard and you were a white middle class kid, the Beastie Boys was right up your alley because it didn't even really care what they were saying, but it was just, oh, you know, like we're going to nick your car badge and fuck you and drink your beer, you know. And so that was the vibe. And then you kind of work backwards from that to where they got their influences from. And I had these cool mates. I had a mate called Jim, who's a really good skater, who I'm still good friends with. And he sort of turned me on to like some American punk. And then some other couple of mates, one of which I ended on forming my first band with. And they just had great punk collections from their older brothers. And so it was like, oh, can I nick that? Can I nick that? And that's probably where it come from.
Was there like a skate community then where you'd play music or anything like that?
Definitely. Yeah, the skateboard thing was like the first. I always think that was the first, you know, like bands are gangs, you know, usually. And then like the skateboard thing, maybe was the first gang in my life. It was the first time I had a group of friends who it was like you lived and breathed it like you do in a band. Like it's 24/7. It's like, well, that's all you talk about. That's all you do. You hang out with each other. You know each other. You just live in each other's pockets. And I think that was a good training ground for it because that skate scene was just there were so few people doing it and it was so niche and cool and like, well, we thought cool, you know. But if you knew another skater, you'd stop someone on the street if you didn't know them and you saw them with a deck going past, you'd be like, all right, and then you'd be part of your gang, you know.
I was hearing about like skate culture though back then. Obviously, we're going like way before internet and never really came on TV that much. So where would you hear about it? Could you get magazines or fanzines?
Yeah, like Thrasher magazine and Transworld magazine were the two American ones, and the Americans just led it. They were like rock stars, really, in the pro skaters that you see in there and the brands. It was always quite fashion driven as well in a way. Everyone would hate me for saying that, but it was in those days, it was very much like brand driven and, you know, it's almost like your style of dress would come from your favourite skater. And it was very much like the music scene. You'd have your influences and your people and you'd adopt their viewpoint a little bit, you know, like you do with bands. One particular skater who I really loved called Mike Vallely, who was a street skater, who's still going. And he was at the time, he was the first ever vegetarian, I'd heard, you know, so everyone became vegetarian and shaved all their hair off because he had a skinhead. And, you know, it was a bit like that. You sort of had idols that you know, and luckily there were some cool people involved in it. So they weren't bad, like, role models.
Where would you hear about new bands? Did you have like a group of friends or did you have like a record shop you could go to? Or was it just Woolworths?
Like I said, I was really lucky. I had some really cool mates. So, like I said, that mate I mentioned earlier, Jim, he sort of researched like the coolest sort of label. Like he was like, oh yeah, they've got everything off Discord. And so he'd work through the back catalogue and then he'd work through, you know, like Bad Religion, they'd be on this, they'd write, oh, well, Interscope. And then you sort of discover artists that way, really. And a lot of it was like mail order.
Was you into it straight away or was you listening to it because your mates were listening to it and it took some kind of getting into?
Oh yeah, man. I wasn't. I was a right follower. I was just like, oh, I like that. But I mean, some stuff I'd listen to and I go, oh yeah, no, I don't like it, you know. But probably would like sneak the odd like fucking, I don't know, like Axel F, bit of Light Relief or you know U2 or something like that. But it kind of snowballed, and then I found my own stride with stuff like you know like Fugazi were a massive influence on me, and I loved them, and they were when I started playing guitar and stuff. They were a real influence.
Yeah, 'cause you was a guitarist before stepping up as frontman. Was that the whole Steve Jones thing, Sex Pistols?
Yeah, Steve Jones Pistols. I mean, I just wanted to do something like, because skating was a thing, but the music thing was like, I had a real like drawing or whatever. It was just another way of expressing the ideas you had. And I was desperate to do something. And like musicians were definitely those people who, you know, I always think musicians were those twats that sat in the music room at lunchtime, do you know what I mean? Looking sad and playing piano and you know, the boffins. And I was never in with them. So it was a bit of an outside thing. And I was just desperate to do something. I had a record, but I think I pinched off of Pee-wee, or who was the singer in my first band, of the Sex Pistols, and it had a picture disc on the back of some bootleg. It had a picture of them on the riverboat. And it wasn't like John Rotten or anything. It was, I was just looking at Steve Jones. He looked fucking cool with that white guitar. I was like, yeah, I want to do that. That was the real, you know, starting point. Something as silly as that photo on that record. Not that he should, but he couldn't remember that. It's like someone taking a screenshot of you right now and going, do you know what? I'm going to fucking learn to play bass. I remember seeing that picture. It's that weird, do you know what I mean? But when you're a kid, those things are, I don't know, my imagination filled in how cool everything around it, what I couldn't see in the picture was. And I just thought, oh, imagine being the dude in the middle with the fucking white guitar.
I love that, your imagination filled in all the stuff around it. That's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, it could never have been as good as the way I dreamt it up, you know what I mean?
Am I right? A lot of the guitars on the new Grand Theft Audio album, they're recorded with your very first guitar.
Oh, yeah.
Full circle.
Yeah, well, I tried to be punk rock purity. And only because I found it again at my parents'. And when I saw it, I was like, fucking hell, wow, you know, and I was like, and I was really amazed it would even play as well as it did, because I thought the neck must be like a banana. It's been in the loft for like 30 years or whatever, but it wasn't. It was really good. It's a real plank. But yeah, and I got it, and then I thought, oh, that'd be a cool thing to use on, you know, I restrung it and set it up a bit and did the intonation. And I thought, well, yeah, cool. And then that's really what did it. But as you know, because you've been there when we're trying to work it out with Ben, it didn't always work using that fucking tuner that I found in the loft as well, that doesn't tune anything to concert pitch.
Sounds great, but when anyone tries to play along with it...
It's like different tuning for every song, like we're playing Arabic traditional folk music or something. Yeah, no, so very pure, but probably not the most sensible choice. Would have been better sticking to the Les Paul, would have been easier, I reckon.
Did you have a gig with that guitar when you first started?
Oh, no, I did. I think the only gigs I did were in my bedroom, like looking at it and wishing I could make it sound like something. You know what I mean? I used to lean it up against the wall and turn the little amp on. I had a little, you know, I don't know, Marlin or something amp. I remember turning it on and listening to it feed back and then turning it off when it got too raw. Not even touching it, you know, like one day, you know, that sort of Wayne's World thing.
Shut up. Which band was it then that you made the jump from guitar to vocals?
Real TV. It was that band, which was like the mid-90s, I suppose, early mid-90s.
Had you been in a bunch of bands before then, just jamming with mates and stuff?
Yeah, I've been in my first band with the guy I mentioned, Pee-wee, was called the Culture Sluts. That was just like a proper, just punk as fuck, you know, like as the name would suggest. And that was awesome. That was really great fun, like the most rock and roll band you'll ever be in, because it's just your mates and your little hometown and your idea of what it's like to be in a rock band, which is always much more lurid than a real rock band.
Was you doing all the logos and posters?
Oh, yeah. I used to love doing all that. So I used to go to work and it'd be after my working day would be trying to get to the photocopier to make flyers, and, you know, it was all about that, and fanzine and whatever you could do. And where I lived as well, in Chelmsford, there was a really good music scene. So that was the really lucky thing. I think if I'd lived anywhere else, I reckon I would have just been in it, and then probably it would have died on the vine. But there was places that would have you play, as they did, if you'd been playing for like 2 weeks and you were shite. But they'd have you twice a week if they could, you know. So it's a great way to learn how to play. Really lucky like that.
Who were the local heroes around there?
The thing was, like, the music that I was into at that time wasn't that kind of popular. The big thing was like indie. So there was a lot of, like, you know, the local sort of indie music heroes with this band called Garp, who I later on joined to play guitar for a little while. And that was like joining the fucking Beatles, you know, of the local area. But there was a few. There was a band called Manta Ray, had a record deal with one of the indie labels. There was a lot knocking around, but because they weren't my genre, you know what I mean, I never really took much notice of it. I always felt sort of outside of it. We was busy doing that sort of scrote music. Middle class people pretending to be like punk and poor.
Was Real TV the first band where you really started to like pushing stuff then?
That was the crossover where I suddenly took it, like serious. Before then, I'd done the Culture Sluts, and then I'd done a couple of other things. I joined Gart with those local heroes, and that sort of opened my eyes a bit. They were like a proper band where we supported Blur at Colchester Arts Institute, and we made a single, and we had reviews in the Enemy all saying we were shite, and whatever, and all that stuff. And we never toured, but we'd go up north to play like a gig in a van, and all the stuff that gets a bit more up a notch. And then myself, Kieran the drummer, who went on to play for Prodigy, and Johnny the bassist, we then left that band and formed Real TV with Fraggle, who was in Back to the Planet, and another guy called Fat Bob, who was a keyboard player. And that was when it was like, look, this isn't kid stuff anymore. Like all my mates had sort of grown out of it a bit, and we were like the people who could never afford to buy a pint in the pub, that sort of thing. But then it was like, no, let's fucking do it. And then we just toured and did everything ourselves. So we had that same punk rock ethic, but we were much more intent about it, took it much more seriously.
How old was you then at that time?
I must have been 20-something, like in my early 20s.
Is it the Real TV stuff you worked with Rat Scabies of The Damned?
Yeah, he produced our first single and most of our album, yeah. And that was cool as fuck. I mean, like, the whole attitude of the band was so punk as fuck, you know what I mean? Like, but the music wasn't really punk, but we just had that thing of just making it happen for ourselves. Like our very first tour we did with this American band called Civ, and they came over, CIV, and they were like a sort of hardcore type band, and we wanted to go on the tour, but we had no way of doing it. So we just literally pulled together all our dole money, got a van, got our equipment, and just turned up at the first gig and said, can we go on first? And they were like, oh, well, we can't pay you anything. Almost like fuck off. And we made such a pest of ourselves that they let us. So we did that, and then we did the next one. And in the end, they just had us on the tour because we just kept turning up, and we'd go down better than the main support. They were a bit pissed off because I think their label had paid to get them on it. We'd do stuff like that, and we just had this real cocksure. We're fucking Real TV. We're brilliant, and it sort of people sort of went, oh, yeah, right, okay. But it was like a proper love affair of a band. Like we all loved each other dearly, and we never made any money or anything like that, but we had such a blast doing it. And we toured continually. We was all sleeping on people's floors, and we got to play big festivals, we played Phoenix. Did stuff that I'm really proud of, but because we had no label or no support, but Kerrang liked us. And then obviously that's how I met Ritch. Come and saw us completely by chance one day in Camden. And then he was went to Ginger and said, oh, you've got to come and see this band. And then the Wildhearts asked us to go on tour with them, which for us was like a massive break because it opened us up to the Kerrang audience and that sort of side of things. And that's when I met Ritch. So it was like, it's been a long old love affair, that has.
How was it being the frontman? Did you enjoy it? Because I know you got nervous before the gigs the other week.
When I was a guitarist, it was kind of easier to stand behind something and you've got like a prop, like a little bit of a barrier, and if it's all going sour, you can always relax in the knowledge that you're not the fucking one who's having to deal, get your head down and play. And also because you want it to be good. I'm always the thing where I just felt I never plan what I'm going to do. I always just think, right, we're just going to go out and read the room, and you're trying to convey that sort of, I'm always trying to convey a feeling, like a thing of like excitement of like, right, okay, let's do it. It's all of us here right now. Let's see what happens, It's like nervous energy. That bollocks, and I was shitting myself, wasn't I?
So you and Ritch meet. What was you doing at the time? He got in touch to see if you'd be interested in singing on this new project he was working on in the late 90s.
Real TV had finished and I was doing a band called Viva Finito, which was probably more a kind of yo-yos-esque rock and roll-y type, back to basics. I was playing guitar in that and singing. And after Real TV, I just wanted to do something completely different. So it was a bit more song-driven and a bit more single-orientated and more like a straight-ahead rock and roll band, And he just phoned me out of the blue, which was fucking bizarre because I still don't know how he got my number or anything. I was actually staying at my mum's at the time, and my mum come and someone on the phone for him. I was like, and he sort of went, all right, it's Ritch. I'm just thinking you might be perfect to come and do some vocals for us. So I was like, fuck did you get my number? Because we weren't mates, he was like, Kieran, our drummer's mate. I wasn't really friendly with Ritch, even though we'd done the tour. Singers don't associate with riff-raff like drummers, you know what I mean? And I was sort of a bit like, oh, well, I'll just do this as like it was a real curiosity for me. I just was like, oh, these two fellas doing this electronic project. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll go and do a bit. And I think they had Jason from A, I think they were just getting different people to just sing on different tracks. So I just took it as that. I thought, I'll go down, do one, and then forget about it.
Didn't he send you a cassette which had We Love You on there? Did that have Jason's vocals on it, or was that somebody else?
No, that had Ritch and Ralph on it. And that was the one that sold me, really, because the one they wanted me to sing on was, I think, Wake Up was the first one they sent. And they sent We Love You to sort of give me a hint of what they were sort of getting at. And I listened to Wake Up and I thought, oh, this sounds dog shit. I thought it sounded like Aztec camera being bummed by EMF or something, and I was like, this is rubbish. And I really didn't like it that much. And then I listened to We Love You and I was like, oh, that's fucking rad. It was so catchy. And nicked the chorus off of Clash City Rockers, which was one of my favourite songs. So I was like, oh, I'll just go and see what it is about.
Did it change much in the studio? Was it the format still pretty much the same?
Kind of the same. I mean, obviously they didn't have lyrics. They weren't writing lyrics, so I sort of started writing words. I mean, on that first album, I'd never worked that way, and I never have since. It was a really strange way to work because I'd always been in bands where you had a kind of history together. You were friends, or you had a sort of gang, or you came from the same town or something. This was like totally different for me. This was like we're writing almost to order. We've got a publishing deal, all those two had. Ralph was just steadfast about it. He had so much foresight, Ralph. He's a genius. He's almost like he had a crystal ball and he went, what it's going to be is going to be like heavy metal, but with like loads of pop hooks, which would be new metal in a couple of years. And he was just like, no, we're going to do this. And he was absolutely definite about it. And he was right. It did work. Got a deal like that, no problem at all.
Didn't you get a deal before you'd all even been in a rehearsal room?
Yeah. We never, ever played in a room together by the time we got a record deal. So we got this fucking massive record deal, this tour. Our first gigs were, I think we did a couple of warm-up gigs in Florida and then we went straight on the Walk tour. So that was the first ever shows we played together as a band. But the first time we actually all stood together in a room and pretended to play was the video for We Love You. Chris joined right at the very end. The album had kind of been finished. And then Chris joined because we had to make a band. We had to have a live band and Chris was available and it was like great. He was friends with me. He was also friends with Ritch. So it was like wicked. He fits in perfect and Chris was great laugh. And then we was away.
How exciting was that for you? Was you just like kind of hold on tight, away we go?
Dude, you can't believe it. Like I say to people all the time, it was like being like one of these Bell End lottery winners. Like it is that much of a big deal, especially, you've been in bands, you're always trying to get somewhere and trying to get a deal. And then after years, like 11 or something years of being in bands, all of a sudden, I'd never had a pot to piss in or anything. And overnight, you've done it. And I didn't even know who to tell. What do I do? Like phone my mum and go like, I've got a record deal, and all those things suddenly come true. And it was literally as nuts as winning the lottery because it was like, okay, I was sleeping on Chris's settee or whatever and him lending me 10 quid every now and then to get fags and go out or whatever. And then suddenly overnight, it was like you've got a shitload of money in your bank account. Everyone's telling you you're going to be massive. And next thing I know, I can remember sitting in an office in New York in Warner's or whatever, just like thinking, is this really fucking happening? It was just nuts. It was nuts. Exactly like the films,
Did you all get on well straight from the beginning?
Yeah, we did. The trouble was we needed to bond really quickly, because like I said, we had nothing to fall back on. And it is daunting when someone goes, well, okay, I'll give you what you want, but you've got to come up with the goods. And they want their pound of flesh. They don't sign you to be like, oh, we'll develop you. It's like, we want to make you Green Day now. We want to make money. So we want you to be big and we want you to be brash. And, like Americans just like that sort of communication, big and bold and obvious. So there was nowhere to hide. We had to be out there and be firing on all cylinders. So between us personally, it was kind of, I think the pressure was quite a lot. And that does result in you all banding together with your backs against the wall and drinking yourself into a position of like, we're all right, we can do it. We got this. It was a bit like that, I think, in retrospect.
How was it going out to America for the first time for you? Like, because say you just been like Southend and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, man. I think the furthest I'd ever been was like the fucking Isle of Wight. Like all the others, Chris had obviously been in Three Colours Red, Ritch in the Wildhearts, Ralph had been a really famous producer around the 90s, and they were all quite mature and I was quite immature. I hadn't really been anywhere or done anything. So for me, it was just amazing. I sat on the back of the bus and just looked out the window and I just couldn't sleep because I'd never even been in a big tour bus. And I was like, they were all kind of nonchalant about it. I was like, fucking hell, look at this. And every truck stop I was out and I was like buying fucking cowboy hats and Elvis Presley telephones and I was just so into America.
Bagfuls of key rings.
Yeah. Just a massive culture shock because I was so, like we all were. I think if you grew up in the 80s, all my cultural icons and identity came from America. They weren't accessible in England, but it just that my whole cultural upbringing was American because of television. So it was just, I'm in the land of TV, which was like amazing to me.
Very cool, man. So when you recorded the album, but you toured America before it actually came out, what was you promoting on those initial days? Was there any singles on the radio or anything like that?
I can't really remember. I think Stupid Ass was the first single, but I think at first the label were just promoting the band. They had all these street teams doing all these sticker things. It's really different in America, and it's really corporate, really. But they invested a lot of money in us, and they, like I say, they want their pound of flesh. They want you to be big. So it's an incredible feeling to have that machine behind you. It's not parochial like England. It's not like there's no fucking about. There wasn't any like soft soap in it. Every meeting we had, there'd be some like quite strong talk about we're gonna fucking do it. You guys are gonna be fucking huge. I can always remember one of the executives saying, "We cannot fuck this up," and I was like, oh, if only I could see you now to say that to your face, there's no way you guys can fuck this up. It's in the bag. But they believed in us, and they did believe us, and they pushed really hard to make us happen. And that's what it's like. But when those wheels are turning, it's quite overwhelming. We're doing big video shoots and playing big gigs, and you'd have all these people like who would just, get to a different region, and there'd be the representative A&R guy there, and he'd take you out around town, and it was just really strange. It was like being famous without actually achieving anything,
Did you get to meet anybody famous?
We met people along the way, and there was some. I mean, I can tell you about because all of them were like kind of a bit. All of them were like a bit defamatory, but we met some people who were like really cool. Met some heroes, which was wicked. We even met bloody Steve Jones, who for me was like, that's the reason I got into music, was that silly photo on that thing. And then suddenly I'm sitting next to him, meeting him for the first time, oh, wow. And he's sitting in our trailer while we're filming a video, trying to shag all the extras who were on it.
How did he end up there?
Went to breakfast with him somewhere, which sounds like a very LA thing to do, but someone introduced us to him. We went and met him for breakfast. And then we got chatting, and he was talking about doing a track together at the time. And then he came and started hanging out with us, and he came to the video shoot, and yeah, it was really funny. It was really funny. Again, you keep doing that double take. It was like, is this happening? Am I like sitting here watching Dirty Uncle Joe's trying to shag one of the birds in the video? It's just strange, it's just double take stuff. And then it's just another ordinary day. But yeah, we met some nice people. We met some really interesting people, and luckily not too many wankers. So I think we were the biggest wankers most of the time.
But you play with like a real mixed bag of bands out in the US. I think you played with Gary Newman out there, POD, and there was a bunch of stuff with Danny's band, the Yo-Yos. How was it to have all you lot over there at the same time? Did that just ramp everything up?
Fucking hell, man. Like the things where we'd hook up with the Yo-Yos, it's like the Bash Street Kids meeting the cast of Carry On Camping and getting the crack in. You know what I mean? It was just fucking brutal. It was like Brits on the piss, gonna like give us all revoking visas everywhere. It was hard.
Whose idea was that?
Fuck knows. Yeah. They were doing really well in America at the time. They were on Sub Pop, and they were playing some great shows, and they were fucking great at that point. But, again, like hard living band, and we were quite hard living, and so it doesn't make for smooth, you know what I mean? It wasn't very professional, but fun, really good fun.
Did they like throw you on the same bus, or was you just one in one bus, one in another? You just meet up?
No fucking way. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it'd all been on the same bus. I think poor old Dan, Danny disgraced himself in so many ways in their little tour bus that everyone was dying to get on our one. So I think we had a slightly nicer one. I don't remember any, thing other than just the socialising and getting up to mischief and having a good time. But yeah, it was brutal.
I guess with that mixed bag of bands, you'd be playing to different audiences too, so some young, some old. How was that for you as a frontman? Do you approach each one differently? Or, like you say, just judge the crowd when you go out there?
Well, you find what works. I mean, like, when we were playing the Warped Tour, which I would say was more where we sat. Remember, the record label as well, we're trying all the time to get you to just get you to hit, get you to click and find your stride, and where they could flog you. And I think what happened, if I'm correct, I think probably at the end of the album touring it probably just started to slow down. And then I think, if I remember rightly, the single went on that Dude, Where's My Car film, and then it kind of blew up again. So then they just wanted us to carry on. And then it was like, right. And the big tour available then was the Gary Newman one, because he was having a real resurgence because of Marilyn Manson covering him and all that stuff. And that was a whole sudden, from punk rock SoCal audience to suddenly fucking hell, it's the cast of the Addams Family, from 1979, and we're playing to those people. And I didn't want to do it. I was like, oh, this is going to suck. And we had such a great time. The audience were lovely to us, and you just find different ways of coming across. And, you realise you actually music's just music, isn't it? If you just find a way of selling it.
What was the show in Randall's Island, which is just next to Manhattan?
Oh, was that the one with the gangs? Yeah, that wasn't good. That was a Warp show. I'll just put that down to like culture shock as well, like because we were there and we're playing. And it was a good gig and it was fucking roasting hot. It's an outdoors festival gig. There was obviously quite a contingent of gangs in the audience, and they started throwing the gang signs and doing all the hands and all this stuff, which to like a parochial prick like me from Southend doesn't mean anything. So I was like, started taking the mick out, and I was like, like trying to show them our own gang signs from England. I think one of them was the bunny, and then it was the wanker, and it just went on and on. And like, it was only afterwards a bit times you go, dude, like, just don't hang around here. There's like people who want to kick your fucking arse now. There was a few things like that. I put it down to gross cultural ignorance on my part.
How do you like that Warped Tour format? 'Cause don't you find out where you're playing until like the morning of the gig? You could be like first on or second to last on or something like that.
Don't actually remember. Again, like, you've got to remember, a fair portion of my brain's probably in the tour bus toilet. All I can tell you is I remember that we went on usually after this really shit ska band, which doesn't narrow it down much with the Warped Tour, but I used to wake up with like a banging head to the same da 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 and I think, oh, we're on in like fucking 20 minutes. Like I never found out who they were, but they're fucking dreadful.
Was you out in the US constantly, or was you coming back and going back out again, or was it just one continuous thing?
Yeah, we would come back, but we were like an American band, really. We did one UK tour, like, which was about 2 weeks, I think. And considering we were only really known, like they were saying, like in the fucking music press in England, we were like a rock supergroup because we had Chris and Ritch, who were all in bands that were very big at the time. And my band had a little bit of recognition, and then Ralph, because Ralph had produced EMF, and so there was that. But fundamentally, we were American. We were there for like the next few years, really, and that's where they tried to break us. So, we worked harder there than anywhere else.
With all the promise in the world for Grand Theft Audio, in the early 2000s, you'd be a casualty of the record label collapsing. Did you just walk away from music totally? Was you like done, burnt out, I need to reset?
Yeah, a little bit, because it's really odd. And again, like being the lottery winner, the flip side of it, you then went from being the lottery winner to being like the dude who won the lottery, told everyone, and then spunked it all on like the big gold house and the fucking quad bikes in the garden, and then was penniless, and it was strange. It was hard, actually. It sounds a bit dramatic, but for me personally, what was the hardest is I went back to the same people I'd probably left to go and do the band. Like, a few years later, suddenly back again. I was back on a building site, back with the same guys again. Hold on a minute, didn't you go off to be a rock star? Like, it was a massive comeback down to earth. And because of the time in life as well, like, I got married and I just had my oldest daughter and started a family life. And so everything changes, So it was, I did definitely step away from music a bit. And it was just a bit hard to, what do you do after you've done everything you've dreamt about doing? You know what I mean? Well, you're going to go, I'm going to go and make it again. Just very hard to be motivated.
Who pulled the trigger on ending the band?
It was so difficult at the end. Chris sort of went first because Three Colours Red had another go at reforming, and he sort of went off to do that. And there was a lot of pressure on us to come up with like the next album. And we were like, fucking next album? Do you know what I mean? We haven't even thought about what next thing we're going to have for dinner, let alone like another album. We've just been touring continually, and we were stupidly very unprofessional as we didn't. Like now you'd sit on a bus and maybe you'd come up with some ideas, you do other stuff, more grown-up stuff. We just never did. It was just party. So there was no one had done anything, hadn't written anything. And Ralph was married at the time to go in America, and obviously he wanted to go home. He wanted to go. He didn't want to spend 6 months in England when he'd been away for a year. He wants to get to his family. Ritch, same as me, he was at the family, and it was just all pulling in different directions. And then when the label kind of basically had a massive clear out at London Sire at Warner's, and I think basically most, if not everyone at that label was gone. That whole roster of artists, not just us, was kind of like directionless. You had no one looking after you. You had no one at the label who even knew you or give a fuck about you. We just kind of floated, and they don't want to spend any money on you or do anything. So the choice is made for us, really. It's like, well, look, it's the end of the party. All we've got to do now, really, is do the washing up and fuck off. That's how it felt.
You moved to France for a while, though, right?
Yeah, and that was another thing. I had a really sort of bit of a miserable time after the band, and I sort of went downhill for a bit. And then, again, had a bit of a fresh start, moved countries, I just need a total change. Like I said, back to that thing where I was back where I started 3 years previously, and it was just so fucking depressing. And we had this opportunity. We said, yeah, let's just go and do it. Yeah, and we moved there and ended up being there about 4 years, something like that.
That must be like a proper cleanse.
Yeah, it was just like, I think I really needed it. And not only that, I did need it to stop living that lifestyle, because for a while after the band ended, I carried on living like I was still in the band. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it was like, you know, getting up in the morning, waking up, picking the sick out of your eyes and just going, right, do you have a drink? You know, which isn't real life, is it? You know, it makes it fucking hard to function in the real world when you're still behaving like that. There's a word for those people, isn't there? So, yeah, so it was a bit of a fresh start, and it was like you couldn't get any further departed from what I'd just been doing. It was a big house with a load of land, like a farm, and it was like living a good life, you know, but with berets and onions.
How has it been returning to songwriting, though, and getting ready to tour?
I've loved it. I mean, that was the weird thing. It's like out of nowhere. If you've read that thing about, I've tried it actually, it's true. You know, you can reanimate a fly, you know, if you put it in a freezer. You know that? If you get a housefly and you trap it and you put it in a freezer, they'll freeze cryogenically, and then like you can get it out a year later and it will just come to life and off it goes. So if you ever go in a house in winter and there's loads of dead flies by the window, once you turn the heating on, the whole fucking lot will come back to life and start flying around. It's mental. Yeah, that's what my songwriting thing was like. Just one day, I think I was in the car and I was driving and I suddenly started out, and like I used to, I just got an idea for something. I thought, I want to get home, I'm just going to get the guitar out and just quickly put that thing down. And that's how it started. And I don't know why, because it had been dormant for ages. And then once it started, it was on every day. Must have wrote a ton of material from what this album's been made out of. I bet you there was 25, 30 songs minimum that were half decent. You know, it's not including the crap ones, but I would just have like sort of musical diarrhea for a good sort of 6 months.
What about a lyrical point of view now? Because you're a dad now. Has that reflected in your view of stuff? It was particularly poignant in the band's lead single, Ruin Your Youth. Was it like a view on kids on how they grew up today?
It was a bit, yeah. Oh, blimey, I can't believe you noticed. It was a bit cryptic, but yeah. I mean, my thing with that was like, yeah, it was a bit of reflection on my own kids. And now, you know, my oldest is now 18, 19. And I just kind of look at her life and compare it to mine at 18 and 19. And it's just like they live in this fucking fun sponge, you know. It's such a vacuum. They have to be so aware of themselves and so guarded and so careful about what they give of themselves to the world, because the world just eats people now.
Has she told that you, or have you figured that out?
Just what I observed from looking at it. It's just little things, you know, like old farts like us would have a Facebook account or something, and I'd mention it to one of my kids and she'd be like, oh, that's so uncool, like that's so and it's like, why? And then they'd have like Insta accounts, but they don't put anything on it. You know, but there's nothing about them on it. So I thought it was just them at first, but it's not. It's all their peers. And it's just because they're so conscious of how things are perceived and how they don't want to be perceived. In the end, it's almost like it's better to say nothing than say something wrong. You know what I mean? And I think that's really dangerous and unhealthy, but that's being promoted as the new healthiness, you know what I mean?
Right. So where we'd come from, like learn from your mistakes and all that kind of thing.
A little bit, yeah. I don't feel like they're allowed to make it, and I feel like the opinions that they're given, that's not right. They get a lot more rounded opinion out of things now, but I do think that they're forced into a corner to keep making public declarations about their opinions, whereas we weren't. No one give a fuck what we say about anything, did they? When was the last time your mum and dad said to you, do you know what do you think about LGBT? But that's a common everyday question for kids my kids' age, and something they have to deal with. And it's great that they do know about it and they approach it, but I just wish that everything, not particularly that issue, but all the issues that they face now, I just wish that they were a bit less intense. That's the point of being 18 or 19. You're going to make fucking mistakes and learn from them, and you're going to do things that you wouldn't do necessarily when you're 30 because you'll know better. I just don't feel like they get any breathing space. You know, let people fuck up a bit, you know. Stop trying to get them to be perfect all the time. They all have to be perfect, you know, really rounded and fucking hell, you know, like they know everything.
Yeah, that's a good backprint for a T-shirt. Let people fuck up.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, though? Let them have a fucking stab at it, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not championing them doing anything offensive or unkind. I just think that there's very little breathing space for kids. It's very intense. Their schools are intense, their social life's intense, their peers are intense, and I just don't remember it being like that. Most people couldn't give a fuck. They were like, you know, they're sort of like, oh, yeah, what are you doing? Da, 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 da. And you were just all kind of muddling through. And now I feel like my kids sort of almost leave the front door like this, like, oh, do it. And then they're out, you know, like into the world. Very, very intense.
We grew up in a good time, mate.
Yeah, you can still be a bellend, and you were surrounded by bellends. So it was like no one's going to point you out as one, are they?
Jay, and we'll close it there. That's been ace. I loved it.
I can't wait. We've got another couple of weeks, Rob Ski, me and you.
Go get a rehearsal through first. Make sure you remember the songs.
Oh, fuck the songs. We don't need songs where we're going.
That's like some weird twisted Back to the Future quote, that is.
Yeah, isn't it? No, I can't wait, man. I can't wait. It's going to be killer.
Where are you looking forward to most?
I'm looking forward to Glasgow. I always used to like playing Glasgow. It was good. Brighton will be cool because I've got a lot of friends down there. I'm looking forward to all of them, man. I really am. It's honestly like my holiday for the year. It's been a really full-on year for me this year. And so this is like my reward. It's like wicked. I'm going to do it. And even that, first tour ever sober, where you can just go at it and go, man, I'm going to see it for what it is and enjoy it for what it is. And, having the last two warm-up gigs under our belt, I saw what we were doing and enjoyed it so much more for that. I can't wait now. It's going to be wicked.
Can't be here soon enough. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, man, look after yourself. Practice. If you don't fucking know it, we're fucked. It's on you. I've done my bit. It's on you.
A business.
Big thanks to the mighty Jay Butler of Grand Theft Audio for talking with me on today's Straight to Video podcast. That was a lot of fun, and I look forward to sharing a stage with him over the coming weeks all over the UK. To find out tour dates near you or to pick up the new GTA album, Pass Me The Conch, then head on over to grandtheftaudio.uk and hopefully see you at a show soon. For all up-to-date straight-to-video news, podcasts and merchandise, please visit stvpod.com, where all previous 200 plus episodes live. Or if you listen on a different podcast platform, please be sure to like, follow and share so you don't miss a single episode. And that is all for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. Until we chat again, please look after yourselves and speak soon.